It's nice to be back. This morning I'm talking about sensitivity. Not in the ordinary sense. When you hear someone say, oh, you're talking usually to a teenager, you are so sensitive. Typically, we're saying, you're really touchy. Or, wow, you're reactive. So I'm not talking about that kind of sensitivity this morning. True sensitivity relates to your aura. Your aura is like a receiving and transmitting station. According to the substance or the elements of your aura determines on how you receive and how you transmit. So the more advanced your consciousness is, the better receiver and transmitter you are. There's also obstructions, obstacles that prevent us from transmitting and receiving. And when these obstacles are very much part of our personality life, what we think we are receiving will be distorted. And then that distortion becomes a reality. We make it a reality. And so we don't want obstacles. We don't want elements in our aura that deflect like a mirror. It's like, when you go to like those carnivals I used to go to in Iowa, it was horrifying. You go into the House of Mirrors and these horrible concave or convex mirrors were there, and you just, of course, when you're young and skinny and cute looking, we all laugh and laugh and laugh. But when you're old, you don't want to go to see those mirrors because everything is so distorted. And so that's what happens if we have obstacles and issues and distortions and dysfunctions and elements in our personality nature that prevent us from receiving and transmitting impressions with clarity. So let's say that the mechanism of our sensitivity is the aura. So how you register, how you receive, how you transmit ideas and concepts and thoughts and even that which is around and about you determines the nature, the quality, the elements of your aura. So it is the aura that is the mechanism that makes us sensitive. The aura is defined as the electromagnetic field around our physical body. It is formed. Now think of this. This is where the teaching makes everything so realistic, so possible, as opposed to fantastical. The teaching is telling us that the aura is made of 4 kinds of substances. The first is the etheric body, then the emotional body, also the mental body, and then the intuitional. It's interesting, the substance of intuition plays a very powerful part to our sensitivity. So the more substance of intuition we have within the aura determines the degree of our sensitivity, determines the degree of clarity of our receptivity and how we send our ideas and impressions out into the community, let's say. Sensitivity is the registration of various impressions by these four elements which compose the aura. You may remember this back in the 70s and 80s, there was a lot of interest in Kirlian photography. Do you remember that? We were all so excited about, wow. And I remember when I was living in Florida and Sarasota at the time, there was a mall that had a kiosk where you could go have your aura, right, photographed. And then they interpreted it. Well, this is the deal. Where it did register, what it was registering, the Kirlian photography, what it was registering was the etheric body. So there was some reality to what that photography was able to capture, but it was not capturing the aura. It is the emotional, mental, and intuitional bodies that really make up the aura around our body. This is why when you read in the teachings that the etheric body is the health body, which is a very, very interesting subject actually to delve into the etheric body, because we know so much about the makeup of the etheric body, which is then found in the physical body. But what is curious, it's not really the aura. It's just the health body. So there's a wonderful book, New Dimensions of Healing by Torquem Sardarian. You can read a lot about the etheric body and the health body. Okay, so let me go on. So the aura registers certain impressions, not only from people, but also from objects, whether they're here or far away. So the aura primarily registers people's emotions, thoughts, their motives, their expressions, their state of consciousness and beingness. If you want to build right human relations with your family, with your friends, with your colleagues, your co-workers, increase your sensitivity. Typically, normally, people are not that sensitive. How do you know? Well, you tell them something that would normally excite your feelings, and they just look at you like they're dead. Or even, let's say, they attend this beautiful seminar or conference, or hear an incredibly powerful and profound lecture based on the teaching, and the lecture finishes or the conference finishes. Where are we going to lunch? See, that's a lack of sensitivity because nothing registered. So their aura is like, goes that far from the body. It's just non-existent, so to speak. So the aura has the ability to register people's emotions, their thoughts, their motives. Imagine being sensitive enough to recognize and register a person's motives or their state of consciousness and beingness. If your aura is sensitive, you will have such impressions. Truly, it's hard to imagine if you don't have that kind of sensitivity. And if you have that kind of sensitivity, it is challenging and difficult until you move beyond a certain lack of control, because that sensitivity becomes so profound and so refined that it does begin to control you. It's like you hear the news, you hear about an earthquake, you hear about the fires in Australia, or someone close to you passed, or someone close to them, close to you, died, and you feel it. You're feeling their emotion. You're feeling their own beingness. It's like, what is it? They say you don't know that person until you can walk in their shoes. It's sort of like what it's like. And so there's a period of time as your sensitivity increases that you might think that you are overly, I hate that word, that you are too sensitive. But you'll move beyond that stage to where the energy and the rhythm of that sensitivity is under your control. So the quality and degree and purity of your registration depends on the purity of your etheric body and your emotional body and your mental body and, of course, intuitional body. So if you are 80% emotional, if you are 80% emotional and 10% mental, the registration of your aura will primarily have recorded the emotions and very little of thought. If the 4 substances in a person's aura are balanced, say 20, 20, 20, 20, or greater, your registration is going to be balanced. See what I'm saying? So balance is important. You don't want to be top heavy and you don't want to be bottom heavy. You want to be balanced. So a balanced aura is like a mirror that receives impressions and then transmits those impressions first to the brain and almost simultaneously to your nervous system. So sensitivity has its correspondence with your brain and your nervous system. Do you see how that all ties together? The brain, the mind, and nervous system translates this receiving information with the same degree of accuracy that it was received. It's important for us to balance our etheric, emotional, mental, and intuitional elements. For example, if your intuitional element is dominant, the speed of impression will be 50 times faster, figuratively speaking, than the registration of your mental, emotional, and etheric elements. The elements in the aura can be balanced when you decide to do something and then follow through. This is a way to balance what you are receiving. You must emotionally, mentally, intuitively know what you are doing. This means that you are a balanced person and one who is not driven by emotions nor dominated by your mind. See, we're living in a society today, particularly the developed societies, modern societies, societies where education is outrageously important. Your schooling starts when you're 3 or 4 years old. You know, all this education is to build the mind. So people's mind are becoming dominant. So dominant that nothing else is registering. Someone close to you dies and you say, yeah, well, you know, that's their karma. I actually saw that, a short interview where someone was being interviewed about their feelings regarding the death of Kobe Bryant and his daughter. They said, well, it's his karma, their karma. See, they're dead. See, that's strictly mental. There's no heart registration. Mm-hmm. And they think, well, it's because I'm in control. You know, your heart has feeling. And because we're human, we translate those feelings the way a human being translates those feelings. So where the person may have been accurate, first of all, who are they to say such a horrible thing? See, that's judgment. When the four elements, the etheric, emotional, mental, and intuitional elements are balanced, then the impressions that we have received are registered very clearly and instantaneously. Purity of these elements are important for the registrations of our aura. So for example, let's say that you're ill and you have an etheric physical illness. Your registration is not going to be clear. Just know that. Don't try to justify it and say, yeah, but look at who I am. Realize it's just a fact. It's not a judgment. It doesn't, determine your value and your worth and so forth. It's just a fact. Your aura cannot register the impressions clearly when there is a physical and etheric disease. If the person's emotions are full of glamours and so on, you're not going to have clear registration. If a person is emotionally upset, for example, and someone says something beautiful to them, they'll either reject it, you wonder, wow. Or they won't accept it and they'll attack you and say, clearly you don't know what you're talking about. The registration of impression is not complete or clear. The same situation occurs in our mind. Let us say that you have received an impression in your aura that someone has a great aspiration to teach the hierarchical teaching, or perhaps to be a philanthropist or an artist. Your aura is going to translate these impressions in four dimensions. You receive the impression etherically and you say, what can I do for that someone so that they can accomplish their great aspiration and vision? It's like later today I'm going to be talking about the cosmic magnet. And one of the points that I'm driving home, if you want to have a relationship with the cosmic magnet, have aspiration. So when you find somebody, when you telepathically register, sensitively register that someone has the aspiration to teach the hierarchical teaching, you're going to say, your aura, your impression is going to say, what can I do to help them accomplish that great aspiration? Emotionally, you will feel so beautiful and express your gratitude and joy to the person for their dedication and for their aspiration. You won't say, look, let's go to lunch. See what I'm saying? You can have lunch at nighttime. Mentally, you will translate the impression by saying how beautiful their life purpose is. They are living a goal-fitting life. Now, in Agni Yoga, you read this word, goal-fitting, or goal-fittingly, through every single one of those books that we call the series, the Agni Yoga series. This is what it means to be goal-fitting, to aspire to teach the hierarchical teaching. So if you, let's just use this common word, if you intuit, if you mentally or intuitively register an impression that that person has this great aspiration, you might think, okay, when and how and under what circumstances will the person accomplish their goal? How can you help them accomplish that goal? Or you might even think, what did they do in the past that is now causing them to strive in this manner? Intuitively, you will feel that the person is already doing it. And ask, what kind of blessings must I give this person so that they continue to strive toward their goals? So these are 4 kinds of translations that result when your aura is in balance. If your aura is not pure, the translation will be distorted. The mental conditions that create obstacles to a clear registration will not come as a surprise to you. Vanity. Vanity prevents clear registration. Egoism, prejudice, bias, and so on. For example, if you want to express your love to someone, but that person is prejudiced against you, that love is going to be translated as an attack. See what I was saying in the beginning of the talk this morning? As we increase our sensitivity, we're building toward right human relations. The person receives your love, but because of the distorted mechanism of their mind, they mistranslate your love in various ways, typically hypocrisy. Through hypocrisy. Oh, yeah. If you are a leader of a group, you must know these things. Leaders of a group are burdened with the responsibility to know the members of the group. If you know these things, it will keep you sane and understanding and tolerant. If you receive a sensitive impression about someone and your consciousness is totally self-centered, you're going to translate and use that impression how? In very selfish ways. It's not that you're going to calculate it, it's just instinctively, this is how you're going to translate that impression about someone. If your consciousness expands into group consciousness, then you're going to take that sensitivity, use it for the whole of the group, but even in greater dimensions, sometimes globally or nationally. If you are able to receive impressions and translate them to the measure or the dimension of your consciousness, if it gets bigger and more expansive, then your sensitivity becomes more expansive and more, how can I say, it becomes more of a reality recognized through your life purpose. Does that make sense? Okay. Okay, let me explain a little bit. Let's say that you have a very narrow aura that is still filled and influenced by, these obstacles and these problems called ego and vanity and jealousy and hatred and remorse. Remorse, I don't like that word. It can be interpreted so many ways. Revenge. When you receive an impression, you think you've received this impression, then where is that sensitivity of that impression going to lead you? Right down the rabbit hole. As opposed to if you have a clear receptor, you're receiving impressions like this beautiful, clear, aqua blue lake with no ripples in it. And now you're going to build things for people, construct things, create things for people who are coming behind you, like our great ones. Here we are, 100 years later, just being introduced to the power and the depth of the teaching of one of the masters, Agni Yoga. 100 years later. It's truly amazing. When you exhaust your glamours, you dissolve your illusions, you no longer act under the pressure of self-importance. You meditate rhythmically and continuously, and you keep your thoughts pure and lofty. Sometimes you may feel that something odd is happening to you, but you don't know exactly what it is. You are receiving an impression. If your intuition is advanced, you're going to locate where that impression is coming from and how and to what degree the content of the impression is safe or dangerous. If your intuitional element is really charging your aura, you will feel impressions coming from higher sources. Now, what does this mean? It means you're going to translate impressions from these higher sources through poetry, through music, through dance, through creating a new country. Depends on how far and great your sensitivity is able to record. So the intuitional element is very important in our aura. Clairvoyants tell us that when the intuitional element begins to flow into your aura, it creates a golden flame in the aura that's very magnetic to impression. When the intuitional element increases, when your intuitional element increases 60 to 70%, then is when you can control this sensitivity. The teaching in referring to psychic diseases and ailments says that a time comes when a light bearer is so sensitive to glamours and feelings and depression and so on, that if that someone is depressed, they feel their depression because they are soaking it up like a sponge. They feel it in their solar plexus and become so unhappy that they don't know what to do. They are feeling the emotions of their friends, either feeling the emotions of their family members. This is a very difficult stage in discipleship, and it actually has a name to it. It's called the dark bridge. The illumined one begins to register the ills of humanity. They hear bad news on television, or for 3 or 4 days they fight with someone after they sit there immersed in the impeachment trials. And they want to fight with everyone. But if they examine the cause, they're going to find that they were very negatively impressed with the television image. They were being a sponge. And what were you being a sponge for? The dirty water of others. The intuitional element is very important in our sensitivity mechanism. By increasing our intuitional substance, we become sensitive. So sensitivity not only consists of thoughts and emotions and motives and consciousness and beingness, it also incorporates other impressions. For example, you approach an object, but then you feel as if you don't want to get close to that object. Or sometimes people who are nervous and irritable will touch you. And they make you feel their irritation. Sometimes when we go to the movies or other public places and sit in a chair, we don't feel comfortable, and we move to another location. We do this because we are sensitive. Sometimes someone cooks for you and you can't eat it. This is also sensitivity registration. One day I was attending a wedding where my spiritual teacher was also in attendance. I was feeling so happy to see the couple marry. They were beautiful. But after the ceremony and more people began arriving for this celebration, I began feeling very odd, overwhelmed, and I wanted to leave. My teacher saw me and grabbed me and dragged me outside, and he explained what was happening. And he said, "You know, you're like a sponge, just absorbing all the emotions of everyone here. So just stay with me and I'll help you through it." And he did, and my sanity returned, and I stayed throughout the reception. It was such an important experience. First of all, because he recognized it. And then he found a way, only through his aura, where he could neutralize, see, the effect of that sponge that was taking place. He wringed it out. In time, the substance of our intuition will help us find the cause to sensitive impressions, thoughts that come to us from others or even from space. Sometimes you will be able to deal with the effects, sometimes not. It's a science. It's a science for us to learn from. Sometimes we force ourselves against our own registrations, against an impression, and go ahead and take that action, and this creates a problem. Then, because the aura told us it would not be good to be with that person. But our mind forces us, you can do it. But you will always lose when you follow advice that is opposed to your registration. There are certain obstacles of sensitivity we must avoid. Mental and nervous disorders. Mental and nervous disorders distort impressions. It's almost, for me, it's almost like a violation of the aura. That aura of the person with mental health problems or nervous disorders will be violating the purity of your aura. When you reach that point where you have 60 or 70% substance of intuition, then the aura automatically, because of its purity, can accept it and neutralize it. But most of us are not there yet. So don't develop a savior complex and go into a sanatorium and say, I'm going to save them. Because that becomes an obstacle. That mental health, their nervous system becomes an obstacle to you, to your aura. Emotional turbulences, heavy desires, negative emotions are also certainly obstacles to sensitivity. Mental worries, mental worries, illusions, vanity, guilt feelings, and destructive plans are obstacles to your sensitivity. They distort sensitivity. So if you harbor destructive plans in your mind, those plans are going to distort and disfigure your impressions. Mentally, you're not going to receive the mental aspect of the impression. Instead, you receive the emotional and etheric, physical part of that impression, and then it creates an unbalanced reception. Hatred and ill will directed to you will distort your aura. Hatred and ill will distort your aura. One of the greatest tasks of aspirants and disciples is not to evoke hatred from others, no matter what. Because aspirants and disciples are very sensitive, those who hate them and think about them with ill will and revenge will poison them. I had an experience, fortunately very few such experiences, but where there was a person who truly, truly hated me with their whole being. And one day, their astral body came into my office. What alerted me was the odor. Hatred emits an odor. And the astral body of that person was so permeated with that hatred that I caught it. And then I saw who it was. So I was able to recognize who the person was and got it out of the office. Ill will and revenge will poison your aura. So through this process of increasing your sensitivity, you're giving tests, you're put in critical situation to learn how to deal with it until you have enough, that 60 to 80% intuitional element or substance in your aura. And then it's like a firewall. Just cast them aside. You receive these negative impressions at a time that you're receiving love and admiration that are both being sent to you telepathically. And what happens, it's like you have hatred and ill will coming from this angle, and love and care sent from this angle, and you have a mixed aura. It's like alphabet soup. Spicy and sweet and hot and sour. So the love and the admiration will mix with the ill will, and it becomes like dirty water surrounding you. It is not only important that you love others, but it is also very important that others love you. Their love creates an electromagnetic aura, and you become a tremendous receiver of clear impression. If a few people start directing poison to your consciousness, you're going to be in trouble. As my spiritual teacher said, you will be finished. You will have to fight against it and waste your time and energy, and this is why Christ said, love each other. This is very difficult. It's almost impossible. It's almost impossible to please everyone. They will find a reason to hate you. And if that hate increases, it's going to destroy your radar system. The system of sensitivity is like a spider's web around you that is distorted by hate. I held a class one evening where one student in the class kept staring at me, directing hatred toward me, even though I smiled at her. And I learned this is the evil eye. It's a very real thing, this evil eye. At first, it caused chaos in my thinking. And so I shifted my focus from that evil red eye, and it was red. And I shifted my focus and began to envision a master. the love of a great one. And she left me alone. The evil eye went back to sleep. Sometimes by being more beautiful, you can create more hatred. But if you are ugly, they already hate you. So how can we keep this balance? In Chinese philosophy, it is said, be the greatest, but act as if you are nothing, so that people will not hate you. Counselors and others who work with people who are constantly undergoing tension have a difficult time keeping their balance. This is why psychiatrists and counselors are frequently found depressed and unhealthy. This is why we tell them, go to the woods for a week. Take a retreat every few days. Our sensitivity must increase, and we must go through many kinds of suffering and joy, registering the pains and joys of other people. But if we want to develop our aura and make it perfect, we must go through all the suffering that leads to maturity. One of the questions in one of our meditation courses is, are you demonstrating spiritual maturity? Nobody knows what that means. Now you do. Okay? This will take a long time, but eventually the intuitional element will increase in our aura to such a degree that we will be able to register the pains and sufferings of other people, seeing also at the same time the door opening before them and leading them through that portal to increasing joy. Sensitivity will eventually put you in contact with the guiding and creative forces of nature, enabling you to cooperate with them. Our editing team has spent quite a bit of time editing the articles written by Nicholas Roerich. Honestly, when you read these articles, all now in various books, the latest one being Vigil, Letters from Asia, you're going to learn about sensitivity, that sensitivity that is so fully developed that, and I'm going to repeat the sentence, it put Nicholas Roerich, in this case, in contact with the guiding and creating forces of nature, and he was able to write about it. So when you see those books in our book room, don't walk by them and say, he died in the 1940s. It's old age stuff. No, it is not old age. That kind of sensitivity is ageless, and we can learn from it. So the more we progress and no longer act under the pressure of our self-interest, as long as we keep our thoughts pure and lofty, as long as we create or expand our field of service and develop compassion, the more we are going to become sensitive to impression, and the more control that we're going to gain over them. Impressions are not always pure and direct. Most of them are a mixture of many elements, but advanced sensitivity filters them. Okay, so that's sensitivity. It's so amazing to me to have the teachings as our resource, to understand why we are here, why are we here, why are we on this planet, particularly at this time. Think about it.